Welcome to the Starting Over podcast. I am your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is where we look at the strategies and tactics and mechanics behind the game of HeroClix. It is hot as fire in Kansas City, and that's why you hear this bzzz in the background, because when I previously tried to record with the fan off for a better audio quality, my recording program of Audacity decided that it wanted to act audacious to me and not record after 10 minutes. So after a nice reboot and refreshing of the computer goodness, we're right back. And I'm recording for you at 12:38 a.m. Saturday sometime at the end of June. So you might be asking yourself, Dark Logos, why is Dark Logos recording at this hour of the night? Well, here's what happened. I had a great tournament day today against a guy I've known for a long time, and his name is Pat. Big shout outs to Pat. And he's one of the biggest Ghost Rider War Machine fans that I've known. And what ended up happening is we were talking about the meta, and he brought to me a legitimate, statement about the show and about the meta. But he said about my show, it's a little bit complicated, and sometimes, it's easy to get lost, and sometimes the elements talked about are a little bit above them, and then the other thing he said is, with the meta right now, it just seems so confusing of, where to begin. I also got a sort of a response from another gentleman on a certain website, which I can't name. His name is Fox Optimize. And pretty much he says, this guy's saying, thanks for the podcast, and, where do I begin with the meta? I just got back into the game. And so, this is sort of a show dedicated to those guys and everybody else who sort of feels like, man, it's been rough, and then retirement's coming, and I don't know what to do, and I don't want to go on this losing streak, and Chaos War and all this War of Light and this and that and the other thing. Where do I begin, and how do I start cobbling together some sense of the meta for myself? So right now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on how do you, the listener, approach the meta in a means that's beneficial to you. Okay? So let's start off. The first thing that you have to realize is this. You are going to be in a position where a lot of tough things happen, and they're going to just be annoying, and there's going to be a lot of things that's going to come out that's just ridiculous, and it just seems like you're faced with this Atlantean task or Atlantean task, whatever you would say with Atlas, on your shoulder, and it seems like you can't move and you can't go anywhere, and that's one of the main reasons why I started the show. So the first thing that you have to say to yourself is, what type of player am I? And I'm not talking the Spike and the Timmys and all that other stuff. By you listening to this, you're technically hardcore because you're investing time. You might not have hardcore results, but you're hardcore. Because if you didn't listen to this, and this isn't like a dig, but you would be more content with ClicksCast, where the guys just sort of sit around and shoot the crap and talk about the things that they love and hate about the game, and don't really tell you too much about it, and then you would be like an okay fanboy. The moment that you listen to this show is the moment you said, I want to know more. Okay. And you might not process everything, but you said, I want to know more. Or you just like the cut of my jib. I don't know. So let's go back. Okay, and we'll look at some simple things. The first off, you identify what type of player you are stylistically. Are you the Hulk smash puny humans type player? Are you the, Johnny Storm, I sit back and I will blast you from 20 feet away type player? Or are you that, enchantress type player where your whole goal is just to jack up your other opponent's stuff and make it so that it's so hard for them to do what they do? You don't necessarily have to be, wonderfully successful at what you're doing, as long as you completely stop them from doing what they're doing, or somewhere in between. That's up to you. But deciding what type of player are you. Let's say you're that Hulk smash, and you wanted to play a team like that. And I'll give you an example from me personally. Recently, this tournament I came out of was 600 points. All figures had to be from a same non-generic keyword. It didn't have to be a theme team, but it did have to share a non-generic keyword. And I talked to a great friend of mine, Kevin, and we came down to 3 teams. It was Guardians of the Galaxy, Skrulls, and Defenders. And the geekiest Silver Surfer fan in me said, man, I'm going to play Silver Surfer with the 236 version. The Defenders ride with me. I so want to get that to work off. A 12-move running shot just right in the face of an opponent. And drop off Namor from the gravity feed and the 124-point Defenders Hulk. And just be like, you want to shoot... I understand you wanting to shoot, Silver Surfer, but the Hulk and Namor have a problem with that, And then, probably wrap it up with, a 75-point Doctor Strange. Okay. The problem I came into was, I said to myself was, this team, that team build would push me as a player. And it would develop in me this sense of aggression that I really, in all honesty, lack. I am a straight turtle player, and you'll see that here in a second. And I was so uncomfortable with it that I didn't even consider running the team, because I said I couldn't fit in Secret Invasion, Doctor Strange. And I said to myself, well, I'm going to have problems with stealth, I'm going to have problems with this and that. And so all the things I said I'm going to have problems with kicked in, and it made me give this process of elimination, saying, okay, I can't play Hulk, I can't play that Silver Surfer, but you know what, I can play that Namor, because I need someone to run interference for me. So here's the team that I came up with, because I am that Johnny Storm glass cannonest player ever. Okay, and for those who want to copy the team, feel free to copy the team, and play it at home. If you want to bring it to a tournament, fine. Just, give me some love and, have some people listen to the podcast after it. But it's 600-point Defenders team. And it's the Gravity Feed Namor at 100 points, the Ghost Rider from Fantastic Forces Experience, 85 points, to Dr. Gravity Feed Doctor Strange's Secret Invasion Doctor Strange, Clea at 59 points, Howard the Duck at 35 points, Infinity Gauntlet packing the Reality and Power Gem, and it all comes in at 598 points. Okay? And the team is very straightforward. Now you might say, well, why would you put the gauntlet on Doctor Strange? He doesn't have willpower. He doesn't have Indomitable. He's not colossal. Well, here's the thing. For my needs, I had to say, what tools do I need to make sure that I'm able to do damage? How can I maximize my perplexes without me wasting them on other elements? How can I bring, more, I would say to an extent, what am I really lacking? I'm lacking probability control without having to go through and lose my perplex, and without burning up my theme team props. And what else am I lacking? I'm really lacking some serious damage modification on my most expensive piece. So the gauntlet helps serves that. Even though none of my games did I get +1 stats. Absolutely none of my games I got +1 stats. But what I did do is I was able to utilize Ranged Combat Expert very effectively. Okay? The other thing about my team is I have Perplex from Secret Invasion Doctor Strange. I have Perplex from the Gravity Feed Doctor Stranges. I have Perplex from Howard the Duck. Sort of see where this is going. With that much Perplex, I'm able to extend Secret Invasion Doctor Strange's range to 13 with 11 attack and possible range combat expert. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, another thing that I can do, which is pretty cool, is I can make Ghost Rider have a 12 attack and 5 damage. And those are things that a lot of people don't really think about. Is, how am I going to support that? And then the other last cool element is that Clea can get pumped up to high heaven, and also, if I push her off of Outwit, she gets enhancement. The mind control really isn't that good. It's very, very situational. There's very, very few reasons why you wouldn't use mind control with Clea, but you can. So, what's the difference between Johnny Storm Flame On and Hulk Smash Defenders Ride With Me Silver Surfer? One of the teams, it's obvious. You're all out aggression. The other team, it's very finesse. You need to know where your perplexes are going. You need to know who and what is doing what on each turn. And 2 turns from now, what's your plan? You have very specific focus fire situations, and then you have to decide how and when to deploy Namor, and to what extent, and do you recall Namor. So those are things that I want to start having marinate in your head. If you say to yourself, man, that first Defenders team with Silver Surfer is my style, then yeah, go ahead and start building for hyper aggressive. Start saying, I'm gonna just knock my opponent in the face figuratively, and then I'm gonna just knock him again and knock him again and knock him again. You might like some Masters of Evil. You might like Harvey Dent because he's giving your attacker willpower, or Edward Nygma. You're going to like Leadership because it's going to take tokens off of your your figures. You're going to like things that allow you to do more in a turn, so you can keep attacking. Okay, or you could say like, man, the Secret Invasion Bazillion Perplex Doctor Strange team is more along my lines of what I play. Then you might want to say, hey, barriers for me, enhancements for me, perplexes for me, finding ways of using defend. Oh my gosh, people underestimate defend so much. All those elements are useful for you to have, in the long run, for packing in your teams. So you determine what type of player you have. Now, with that being said, and I bring up my friend Pat again. Pat brings the most strangest things, and because he likes them, and he puts them together, and he's not dumb, and they work in a very specific way, and he has a tendency of making me melt down inside, because I have no clue of A, what do these figures do, B, what their dials look like, and C, how is this going to try to kill me? And Pat finds a way to do that. Now, sometimes Pat loses, sometimes Pat wins. I'm probably more on the winning spectrum than losing. But you're going to encounter teams that are going to make you think, what is this? Oh my gosh, what is this? What is this going to happen? I don't know. And you'll start focusing so much on what you don't know instead of taking time of figuring out what you do know. So this moves on to our next stage. You know what type of player you are, and you're taking time to grow. Take time to experiment. Okay? And I really say this, and I bring this in light of a current thread with Absman. It says Absman, but it's actually Absorbing Man. I'll just refer to him as Absorbing Man, with the numbers don't lie theory threads on a specific website. The issue that people have with Absorbing Man is he does make some strong claims, and I do want to make this official and say it here on the show. I'm not against science. I'm not against math. I think they're wonderful things. I don't think that they can answer all the questions that we in our culture now demand. We have a culture of absolutism through quantification of numbers, and I don't think the numbers tell the whole truth, and I don't think the numbers always guarantee us a certain reality that we feel that we can calculate. It might lower we might be able to restrict the probability of things of happening, but it doesn't mean that things can't exist outside those parameters. And there's various things in our culture that push us towards that. And I feel that's for people who are pro and for that, pro and against that type of numbers quantifying life, they sort of gave some jacked up backlash or support for Absorbing Man. So going back, Absorbing Man has this thread where he pretty much tries to quantify every clicks and how they operate. And in his theory, a lot of things go down, in which he gives numerical values on really a scale of 1 to, I really want to say about 11, but it's supposed to be about 1 to 10, about how effective figures are, and from a mathematical perspective. In doing that, he gives the reader a basis of looking at, from my opinion, what are okay to solid primary attackers that require little finesse. Okay, some of the higher finesse, very circumstantial figures have lower ratings. It doesn't necessarily mean that those figures are bad, but you really need to have, and in most times, a better collection or a better idea of what's going on when you're using those figures. Okay, but sort of coming back is once you start analyzing things, when it all said and done, Absman's system gives us a good basis to experiment with. It gives us a good basis to sort of say, is this system for real, or is this, a joke? I've done it. There's some things I agree with him, some things I don't agree with him. It's going to be down the line before I have him on the show. I think we'll probably have to play some more games together before that happens. But the one thing I will give him credit is that he decided to experiment with the meta, and he tried to say, okay, this and this is good. Why is this good? This and this is dominant. Why is this dominant? So there's various things on there. I know a whole lot of people, agree or disagree with him. But I want you, in your same, extent, take time and experiment. I want you to say, like, oh man, there's a bunch of figures that I just want to play, and I'm not going to play, but because they're not top tier. Well, why aren't they top tier? It was like, well, they have this and this problem. Are there any figures there that could, counteract those weaknesses? Oh, well, for the point cost, maybe. Oh, or maybe they're good in a 600-point game, but not a 500-point game. Or they're great in a 1,000-point game and not so good in, a 300-point game. Sort of assess, saying, like, maybe this figure isn't crap, but this figure needs to be in this point range so they can do what it does effectively. The prime example of this is Red Skull, the build me a doomsday weapon. You're not getting that off in 300 points many times. It's just too many turns. And by the time you get close, someone's going to be either beating the fire out of Red Skull, or, he's dead. Okay, so you just spend all that time and actions and all that other stuff pretty much for nothing. In a 1,000-point game, if you give your opponent enough distractions and the gauntlet is on somebody else, they will not care about little Johann Schmidt, AEing into Red Skull or Red Skull himself building the Doomsday weapon until it's too late. Okay? And then you have a distinct advantage because Johann Schmidt and the AIM agent have been sitting in the back the entire time, and the AIM agent for a free action has been using Perplex, and Red Skull has been just sitting there like doop-de-doop-de-doo, let's add in those super cannons now. And okay, and super cannons are done. Let's add in targeting, and we're almost done. That's pretty much what's going on. But you're too busy trying to kill my master mold with 3 medics. So those are things for you to think about, creative uses. And while I bring up master mode, I will give you an example of another game. This one time is a shout out to KC Dreadnought. He's another local player here in KC, and you'll see him on various places. But we had a game which was 1,800 points. All Colossals need to be played at max points. You cannot put the gauntlet on a Colossal over 400 points. And he did something rather ingenious. And it required everyone to play a Colossal. Let me just add that. Everyone had to play a Colossal at the tournament. He played Dormammu and the Watcher, put the gauntlet on the Watcher, and played Chase Thanos, 150 point common Superman, the Hope Flash from The Brightest Day, and Chase Thanos, and I almost feel like I'm forgetting something. There's something else there. Eradicator, I think. I know he had like some run. Yeah, it was Eradicator because he ended up getting +1 stats. Okay, so at first this team is. It looks. You think to yourself like, what is this team doing? And what are you up to? But he uses Chase Thanos' ability to swap Watcher's speed value and attack value to make the Watcher have a 14 attack. And then he summons over your 2 highest figures. And with enhancement from Brightest Day Flash, and I think someone had a Perplex, Prob from Dormammu, he can light up a bunch of figures, early turn. And so he created a very ingenious design. He said to himself, and this is my assuming of the dialogue inside of his head. We didn't really ask that. But going off our conversation, I'm assuming this is what was inside of his head. I want to set up a team that I know is going to take on what is common, which is Galactus Tester. Guaranteed. Those are 2 things that go through your head. You're trying to kill Galactus, you're trying to kill Tester. Okay? But at the same time, if no one plays Galactus Tester, what am I going to do? What is my game plan? Can I solve for other problems that come about? Well, he did. He pretty much beat Galactus. All the Galactus teams that he played, he beat them. And it was, some people were a little surprised, some weren't, but he had a team that could take on Galactus. Galactus is not immune to Psychic Blast. Ha ha! Guess who is? Master Mold, which was my team. I played Master Mold at 1500 with Sam from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I know I said I don't like Lord of the Rings, but that Sam was broke. It was broke good. Accomplished perfect position. The Rip Hunter to give my big old Colossal, just to give my Colossal outwit protection. And I played Earthman because I thought he shut down Thanos, and I was wrong. Even I make mistakes, people. And the Cosmic Cube. And we had this most interesting fight because I was able to get some early hits off on his Thanos and pretty much sort of neutered him, and then got away. And he also missed with his 14 attack on my Master Mold. Twice. Yeah, that was act of God. And so this is why numbers don't always mean that, things are going to go your way. And I backed out, and I proceed to heal my master mold. And yeah, he's doing damage to me. He gets his Dormammu in all these various positions. But the entire time, I'm not based. And my medics aren't based. He took some shots at my medics too, but I just healed my medics up with other medics. Okay. So what happened? I said in my team building, oh yeah, people, I don't have a lot of options. I only really have master mold. How am I going to make him work? Shoot, I can't put a full gauntlet on him because that's not possible yet. Okay, I have to play Rip Hunter. What's next? I don't want to be yanked. I assumed that Earthman would do it. Please note my assumptions. So I'm going to play Earthman. That doesn't give me too many points left. I need some medical help, and I'm limited to having 4 non-colossal figures. Okay, so I have 2 more figures that I can add on. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll add in Sam, because he gives me defend. I really want defend. Oh, Sam gives me defend. But he's beating out, I think I had like the vet, what was it? It was like the vet Dr. Midnight. I was like, Sam at 30 is better than vet Dr. Midnight with defend. And I can put on Accomplished Perfect Physician. Oh, look. I can now, have my 10 attack on a 16 defense with Accomplished Perfect Physician, and Sam can also heal. So when I started combining all these different elements together, yeah, you can punch and punch and punch, Master Mold all day long. But if I'm healing a lot of your damage off, eventually that attrition is going to catch up. Not to forget the fact that I can drop down a 300-point Sentinel. So, what happened? KC Dreadnought brought out something abnormal. He brought out something outside the meta. He brought out something that people at first glance would say, Watchers suck. You could probably go back to Galactic Guardians and I'll say the same thing. Watcher sucks. Watcher with Thanos, that's a different story. Watcher with Chase Thanos is a different story. That suck turns into awesome. Okay? And so he found a way to surprise his opponents. Okay? So how you have to ask yourself, man, everyone's playing X, Y, and Z. How can I surprise my opponents by shutting them down? And this is where we begin counter-meta thinking. Okay? And you'll hear me on the podcast say tons of times, if you're in your local venue, just try to plan to kill your local venue. Or see how people play. Okay? Don't try to be like, I'm going to be facing the guy that won Gen Con. Unless you're in venue with him, and I know Dan and I know George, and I had the lucky chance to talk to Scott. I don't. They're not coming hardcore like Gen Con every week, and so with them, even then, they're pulling silliness and being good with it. So you might surprise them, but you won't automatically just frustrate them. But for your average person that you're going to be playing against, what's going to happen is by bringing out this variation of stuff over time to counter what they are doing, it's going to force your opponents to become better if they consider winning as a modus operandi, as a prime mover in their clicks playing. If you have opponents where their whole thing is, I put together my team in 5 minutes, I just come here to get away from the wife and kids, you never have to worry about those people. Okay, and again, most likely those people aren't listening to this podcast. So those are things that you really need to consider of, okay, who cares about the game? Who's reading, the websites every week? Who's, I'm talking to about how broke Ultron, the Gravity Feed Ultron is, and how she will ruin the meta that I thought was going to be pure after retirement. with Worldbreaker, Hulk, and Brainiac. Who are you talking with those, who are you having those conversations with? Those are the people that you probably need to be a little bit concerned of competitively. Not be fearful, just concerned and be aware of this is where your counter meta is. For me, in my counter meta, for where I live at, the first thing I had to factor in is I told all my friends to listen to my podcast and told all them, at the venue to listen to my podcast. So everything that I say on my podcast can be used against me. So does that mean that I water down what I give you? No. But what it does mean is I have to take a step back and say, I've talked about this, and this. This is how this other person plays, and this other factor, how this other person plays, and this is how they're improving. I need to be very cautious in how I put myself in certain situations and play. So it's not necessarily I changed my team building, not necessarily how I changed, my map selection, but what I said to myself is I have to start assuming that because my opponent knows a lot of information about me because I put it out there freely to help others, including them, then that also means that I myself have to be a lot more careful about my placement, have to be a lot more careful about, what type of lineups I want to run, be, a lot more careful about what I think that team is doing. And being aware that team can, at any stage of the game, change, its primary attacker, change, how it's going to engage me. If he's up on points, he might just run away, and that's completely valid. So those are things that I want you to think of. That's where your beginning of your counter meta comes in. Now, some people are like, well, no, counter meta is where you look at all the figures in the game that are most commonly played, and then you try to pick other figures that are going to beat the most commonly used figures. Well, you might hear me talk about that, but in all honesty, unless you are going to cons or you are in large venues, and I do know there are some people that are in large venues, big shout outs to those Chicago crews with Ken, Ignis Mouse, shout out to him, and I know there's some NY crews out there that are, those venues are huge, but in those situations, then yeah, you need to start saying like, where are the top figures, what are the winners around the area playing, can I start dicing that up, or do I need to adapt parts of what they play and then create something for myself? Okay, but for the rest of us who have maybe like 10 people showing up as a big turnout, what you need to say is not just what's common, what do people like, what are their, I hate using this word, but it's the most exact, what are their fetishes, what are their comic fetishes, and then build from there. If you know someone who loves Ghost Riders and a new Ghost Rider comes out, then he's going to play it, regardless of how great or bad it is. And you can plan around that. The other thing that you can sort of say, if you're going to, for your own personal analysis of where the general meta is and how to make a general counter meta, the first thing I would say is list off the top 10 figures that you think are the best attackers. Just make your own list. Don't compare to other people. Don't outsource it to other websites. Just go ahead and say what are the top 10 figures that I think are going to rule the meta. Attackers. Then make a list of the top 10 support pieces that you think are going to rule the meta. Okay? Compare the two lists and say, man, when I put the top support against the top attackers, only one or two of these figures line up. The rest of these figures don't work out in a comfortable manner. Or you can say, the attacker isn't getting the most out of the support, or the support needs more aggressive action than what this attacker is giving. So once you start balancing those things out, you could say, maybe the issue isn't so much, Ultron's broke, but the fact that Ultron can be teamed up with, and I'm making this up, so please, this is not like a spoil or anything. Ultron can be teamed up with Doombot and a reworking of Danger that is 55 points that gives Outwit and Perplex. Maybe with that combination, then Ultron would work out a lot better. Okay? Versus just saying Ultron's good, Enchantress good, Cyborg good, put them on a team, automatically you win. No. If they have no synergy, if they don't work together and they don't utilize each other, then there's a problem. They will not work out as a top level meta team. So make out your top 10 list. 1 support, 1 attackers. And then say, what is going to be good? Now I also want you to be honest. I don't want you to say, well, Magneto's going to be good because the full gauntlet's going to be there. And then, of course, that means Hellfire Club Guard is going to be good because he gives Magneto Mastermind. No. Don't do that, and don't shortchange yourself. Don't be intellectually lazy. Trust me, I have to push past that because it's easy just to rehash what top players say or what websites say on the show and be like, yep, that's meta. But I actually do work, regardless of how it sounds, some podcast of my own. But make your own list. Don't be dependent on some other cat just saying stuff. Don't be just dependent on me. Because even when I talk to some of the best players in the world, guess what? They don't all agree. Definitely don't all agree. Okay? So don't think that automatically like, well, I heard Cram Company say that it's gospel. I heard George say that it's gospel. I heard Dan say that it's gospel. They're working through the meta too. Okay? And if you look at this last passing Origins, a lot of people are looking to the future of saying, what's the meta looking like with no Metron and Nightcrawler? What does that mean? And where do I go from here? So, when you're starting your counter meta, top 10s, do comparisons, and start pulling stuff out. And the last thing I'll say about that, if you see something in that list that just shines a little bit brighter than the rest, but it doesn't have any synergy, that's the beginning of counter meta. Not just saying I shut down the opposing meta or the current meta, but you're saying is I'm creating a new path in the meta that my opponents are not prepared for, and because they're not prepared for, they won't have any countermeasures for, which means the chances of success are a lot higher. Okay? So, off-the-wall thinking has a purpose. It has a great advantage. Being creative has a purpose. Taking some lumps and getting some losses, and believe it, I do lose, has, some advantages. Okay? The last thing that I want us to sort of focus on as we wrap this up is this. Know where you're going. Okay? And I know this is like know where you're going. It sounds so open-ended. It is for a reason. A lot of people want meta knowledge so that they sound really nerd important. Just lack of a better word. To sound nerd important in front of other HeroClix nerds. It's like, I listened to that podcast the other day and it was saying that this is meta. And so, you know why, because blah, 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 and I heard so-and-so said this, blah, 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 blah. Those people annoy me. Sorry if you're that person. And I know I've just lost, some listeners. I'm sorry. But the main reason those people annoy me is this. They're not looking at the meta to learn, develop, manipulate, create counter meta. They're doing it so that they can seem important and smarter than other people. I will admit I have some moments when I build teams and I'm sitting back to myself and I'm like, I'm so brilliant. I can't be stopped with this team. And then someone crushes me when I actually play it. And the humility and the humbleness hits the core of me. Okay? And so some of my nerd arrogancy and pomp has been beaten out of me over time. Okay? But when you know where you're going, it's not just about obtaining knowledge, but sort of saying, oh, okay, this is a new emerging paradigm or tactic that's in this game. I need to be aware of it in lieu of all these other tactics. And as I look at the figures that are available, these several tactics float to the top. These other tactics that used to be popular aren't as easy to pull off as they once were, so a lot of people might be underestimating them because they're a lot more difficult. So I have a choice of either using a higher, well-known tactic or a tougher to use, less-known tactic. Okay? So you're saying, oh, I'm taking in meta, I'm digesting it. It's becoming a part of me. It's helping me make solid decisions, not just to know, hit that figure for 5 clicks and then follow up with 2 and then 3. That's not just knowing meta, okay? Or I know I need to hit, this is very, very old school, Ultimate Thor to his middle dial. I need to hit him for like 5 with Psychic Blast and then hit him again for like 4 damage or 5 damage to like just about cripple him. And then I need to make sure I have him tied up so he can't get healed. That's meta knowledge that's not going to serve you in the long run. That's immediate knowledge. That's fast food meta knowledge. Okay? But for me to come back and say, you know what, by having a figure that has a lot of damage reduction, very low defensive values, very high attack, very high damage, very high range, and decent mobility, it would be a good idea if I pair that figure up with a defend figure, and if I don't want to pair it up with a defend figure with a high defense, I can always pair that figure up with a support figure because it's going to be really, really easy to heal that figure. Oh, wow. What have we done? We've taken concepts from a highly competitive team and we've broken it down into its core functions. And then in breaking it down to its core functions, we can simulate that in future teams. So remove Ultimate Thor and Paramedic, insert Kang and Donald Blank, insert, oh gosh, this is going back a bit, and this one's a little bit silly, insert Gypsy and 75 points Out of the Shadow Batman. Yeah, oh gosh, that one, that sort of shows my age of the game. Those various things, when they go together, it's like, oh, I can do this. I can take that idea and do this other thing on top of it. So, know where you're going. Also know, sort of say, what's your goal with all this meta knowledge? I do admit I do have some entertaining moments, but a lot of times when I even do the editing, I'm like, oh gosh, this is a little dry. Let me try to spice this up a bit, or can I? But when you say, like, what's your goal? Is your goal to win a tournament? Is your goal to win more games than you lost in this year? Is your goal to, just beat that best person in the venue at least once? I know a couple of kids who beat me recently were like, yeah, we beat Dark Logos, baby. We beat him. So I've suffered some losses. When you look at that, what's your goal? Is your goal just to, sit back and be able to, talk with your friends and be competent about what's going on currently with the game? If those are your goals, make sure you're digesting stuff that's going to help you. If this podcast is, when you listen to it most of the time, you're like, man, I have no clue what's going on. Man, combining Atrocitus with, a Frost Giant champion with, this long-range sniper awesomeness that is Green Arrow. I can create the most unstoppable team, using 15 meta points. If that's too much, and for people who've listened, I have given much nerd love to those pieces, in Rage, in Atrocitus case. If that becomes too much, hey, take a moment, send me an email, startingoverpodcast@gmail, and say, yo, can you flesh this out a little bit? Or I have questions about this in the meta. Or even someone saying, can you give us something simple like how to look at 300-point games again? I would love to go back to that topic matter. Just let me know, because I'm really here to help people out and to also improve the quality of HeroClix, and not just give people excuses to whine and complain, because there's enough of that on the internet. There needs to be a little bit more proactive stuff out there. So, once you determine your goal and you decide what you want to do, pick up bits and pieces. Look at your collection and say, man, this is what I got, and this is what I'm going to use. And then make a list of acquisitions. Say, for me personally, my recent round of purchases involve a Lieutenant Gordon and 2 Harvey Dents, because I know I'm going to abuse the heck out of Harvey Dent. It's just too broken not to. But at the same time, I know where Harvey Dent limits me. So I know that I will most likely not be playing Enchantress on most of my teams when she comes out. Surprise, surprise. But I was able to say to myself, this is where my own personal tech is going. If this is successful, I'm going to keep down this route. If I seem too predictable, I'm going to remove these guys for a while and do something else. For a long time, my personal goal, when I started playing the game, was to win the tournament. Then it graduated from try to never do worse than 2-1, because most of the games around here are 3 rounds. Okay, after saying try not to be, worse than 2-1, I went on to say I want to know more about pieces, and I memorized a ton of pieces. Then my next step was go to a big tournament and try to win. So I went to Topeka way back in the day for the Fantastic Forces preview. And when I was in Tulsa, I went into the Armor Wars preview and pre-releases. And I broke into outrounds in both of those tournaments. While I was at those tournaments, I made another goal. I said, my goal is to build a unconventional team that can take on what I think is the biggest things going right now and just try to do my best. And if I win, I win. And if I don't, I'm not going to be disappointed, because I know there are tons of guys just as good as me or better than me at this game. And guess what? A lot of them don't have podcasts. So, hey, there's probably guys, way more brilliant than I am with this game. And so each of those tournaments, I won some games and I lost some games, made it to outrounds, and then eventually got eliminated. But the highest I got was like 7th place. Okay, and then from there, once I said my next goal is to become a judge, and I became a judge. I was a judge in Tulsa for a little bit, for a place that's no longer open, sadly, Original Game Shop, and I played at Wizards Asylum. I played at I forgot Doug's comic book shop's name, and a bunch of other places, and I found people who were better than me, who stomped me, who defeated me consistently. And their pressure that they gave and how excellent their play was put pressure on the coal that was me, that made me a better player. Okay, so I went from all that, back to Kansas City, and doing this podcast. So I want to tell you, above all, don't look at the top dogs in your meta as unscalable walls or undefeatable opponents or people with hypercomputer brains that know everything. See them as obstacles to your goal that you will get to. Don't look at them as somebody that's invincible. Don't make them little gods in your head, because you're only going to end up pretty much creating your own problems. So, have that tenacity, have that focus, know where you're going, and develop a plan to get there. And in doing that, navigating this meta that we have with a gravity feed, and then a fast forces, then a micro set, and then a main set, and then another gravity feed, and another fast forces, will be a little bit easier, because you're going to know what pieces that you need. You're going to know what pieces that are going to be popular. You know what pieces that you're going to sort of tech to. And as time progresses, anything that you had oversight on, or anything that you felt that, oh man, you didn't need at the time, but now you need, you can go back and buy for cheap. Don't drop all your money on release day, people. Alright, that's it. It is 1:32 in the morning. The brother needs to go to sleep because I have a PD team to play tomorrow. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything, just saying hey to me, hit me up at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. And who knows, if I get enough emails in my inbox, I might tell you what my 900-point PD team is. Hey, anyway, so thank you for listening, and remember, we all got to start over sometime.